up, Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Badlands Media Live. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. Today is September 26th, 2025. And we are going to be replaying the Benjamin Netanyahu address to the United Nations from this morning. This was originally delivered this morning at 9 a.m. We didn't carry it live. I was busy. I had my kids, a couple sick kids. But I did catch the second half of it live. And so we're gonna play the whole thing through. It's about 40 minutes. And then afterwards I will jump on and maybe go back and play a few clips and provide just some analysis. So yeah, without further ado, I will go ahead and get the speech started as people stream in here, and we will take it from there. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen, and then I will see y'all. Looks like the video itself is 43 minutes, so I'll see y'all in 43 minutes.
Assembly will continue its consideration of Agenda Item 8 entitled General Debate. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly. Please, order in the hall. 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 Please order in the hall and please be seated. Please order in the hall.
Mr. President, the families of our dear hostages languishing in the dungeons of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I stood at this podium and I showed this map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis. This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country, Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. You remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah. And believe me, they got the message. And thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above anything else that I could say to you or that we did in this past year, in this past decade, we devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missiles programs. So here's where things stand today. Half the Houthi leadership in Yemen, gone. Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone. Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone. The Assad regime in Syria, gone. Those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and his top atomic bomb scientists, well, they're gone too. Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion, that's from the Bible. This 12-day war will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. And you saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action. President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and we delivered on that promise. We removed an existential threat to Israel, and a mortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud that could have claimed millions and millions of lives. But, ladies and gentlemen, we must remain vigilant. We must remain absolutely clear-minded and vigilant. We must not allow Iran to rebuild its military nuclear capacities. Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium, these stockpiles must be eliminated. And tomorrow, UN Security Council sanctions on Iran must be snapped back. Thanks to the resolve of our people, the courage of our soldiers, and the bold decisions we took, Israel rebounded from its darkest day to deliver one of the most stunning military comebacks in history. But we're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th, but we remember. Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, well, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here? It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight and why we must win. It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters. And these monsters took more than 250 people hostage. And those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers and their grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages, but 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity. These are the names of the 20 living hostages. Matan Angrist, Gali and Zerv Berman, brothers, Elkanah Buchbot, Rom Braslavsky, Nimrod Cohen, Ariel and David Cunyo, another pair of brothers, Guy Gilboa Dalal, Eviatar David. You saw the picture of Eviatar David, emaciated, forced to dig his own grave. Maxim Herkin, Eitan Horn, Segev Kalfon, Bar Cooperstein, Omri Meran, Eitan Moore, Yosef Chaim Ochana, Alon Ohel, Avinatam Or, and Matan Tsengarker. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do something I've never done before. I want to speak from this forum directly to those hostages through loudspeakers. I've surrounded Gaza with massive loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope that our dear hostages will hear my message. And I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. אחינו הגיבורים, מדבר ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו. אני פונה עליכם מעל בימת האו"ם. לא שכחנו אתכם, אפילו לא לשנייה. העם כולו איתכם, ואנחנו לא נשקוט ולא נרפה עד שנחזיר את כולכם הביתה. החיים והחללים כאחד. Our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter and we will not rest until we bring all of you home. ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried. They're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms. Let my people go. Free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48. Free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel. And of course, you understand that the war in Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I'm sure there are people in New York or in London or in Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? And the answer is everything. Because our enemies are your enemies. So let's do something else. So first at the UN, let's do a pop quiz. And raise your hand if you know the answer. Here's the first question. Who shouts death to America? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct, all of the above. Second question. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? Is it A, Al-Qaeda, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, Iran, or E, all of the above? Correct. Again. So here's the point I wanted to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror. I think many of you are already feeling in your own societies the radical Islamist surge. You know, I'm sure you do, you know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. So I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us privately thank us. They tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence, once said, if the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. He said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags, and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that. But regrettably, many leaders who are represented in this hall, they send a very different message. Sure, in the days immediately following October 7th, many of them supported Israel. But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack. We fought back. Now just imagine, just sit back for a second and imagine an attack against America proportioned to the attack against Israel on October 7th. Imagine a regime, a terror regime, dispatching thousands of terrorists to invade the United States. They massacre 40,000 Americans. They take 10,000 Americans hostage. What do you think America would do? You think America would leave that regime standing? You don't think that. No way, not a chance. The United States would wipe out that terror regime and ensure that such savagery would never threaten America again. This is precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. We're wiping out the terror regime of Hamas and ensuring that this savagery will never threaten Israel again. That's what we are doing. That's what any self-respecting government would do. Yet, and it's a yet that I'm sorry to say here, yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you. It's an indictment of weak-kneed leaders who appease evil rather than support a nation whose brave soldiers guard you from the barbarians at the gate. They're already penetrating your gates. When will you learn? You can't appease your way out of jihad, and you won't escape the Islamist storm by sacrificing Israel. To overcome that storm, you have to stand with Israel. But that's not what you're doing. As the prophets of Israel foretold in the Bible, you've turned good into evil and evil into good. Now I want to drill down on this. Take the false charge of genocide. Israel is accused of deliberately targeting civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposite is true. The head of urban warfare studies, Colonel John Spencer, he's perhaps the world's greatest expert on urban warfare. And he says, Israel is applying more measures to minimize civilian casualties than any military in history. And because we're doing that, the ratio of non-combatant to combatant casualties is less than 2-to-1 in Gaza. That's an astoundingly low ratio, lower than NATO's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, especially when you consider that Gaza is one of the most densely populated urban areas on Earth. It has hundreds of miles of terror tunnels underground, and it has countless terror towers above ground, and thousands of terrorists embedded in the tunnels and in these towers in civilian areas. If you want to see what measures Israel takes to avoid civilian casualties in this war, just look at what we're doing now in Gaza City, the last Hamas stronghold, one of the two last strongholds. For 3 weeks, Israel dropped millions of leaflets, sent millions of text messages, and made countless phone calls urging civilians to leave Gaza City before our military moves in. At the same time, Hamas implants itself in mosques schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and tries to force those civilians not to leave, to stay in harm's way. And it often threatens them at gunpoint if they try to do so. For Israel, every civilian casualty is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. Hamas uses civilians as human shields and as props in its sick propaganda war in Israel, against Israel, a propaganda war that the Western media buys hook, line, and sinker. Now, despite Hamas's threats, close to 700,000 Gazans, almost 750,000, have already heeded our calls and moved to safe zones. Now, I want to ask you a simple question, a simple, logical question. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? Would we tell them, get out, if we want to commit genocide? We're trying to get them out. And Hamas is trying to keep them in. And this charge is so baseless. The comparison to genocide, wholesale slaughter of populations. What, did the Nazis ask the Jews to leave, kindly leave, go out? Did others, you want me to name all the genocidal leaders of history? Just go one by one. Did anyone do this? Did they say, get out so we can come in? Of course not. So the truth has been turned on its head. Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization whose charter calls for the murder of all Jews on the planet. This genocidal organization is given a pass. It's barely mentioned. While Israel, which does everything it can to get civilians out of harm's way, Israel is put in the dock. What a joke. You want to hear another one? Israel is accused of deliberately starving the people of Gaza when Israel is deliberately feeding the people of Gaza. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has let into Gaza more than 2 million tons of food and aid. That's 1 ton of aid for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. Nearly 3,000 calories per person per day. Some starvation policy. If there are Gazans who don't have enough food, it's because Hamas is stealing it. Hamas steals it, hoards it, and sells it at exorbitant prices to fight its war machine. Last month, even the UN, not exactly a supporter of Israel. You're supposed to laugh, by the way. Last month, even the UN admitted that Hamas and other armed groups looted 85% of the trucks. That's why you have deprivation. Those who peddled the blood libels of genocide and starvation against Israel are no better than those who peddled blood libels against the Jews in the Middle Ages, when they falsely accused us of poisoning wells, spreading plague, and using the blood of children to bake Passover matzahs. Anti-Semitism dies hard. In fact, it doesn't die at all. It just keeps coming back with its libelous lies, refurbished, regurgitated over and over again. And I want to tell you something else. These anti-Semitic lies, they have consequences. In recent months, Jews have been assaulted in Canada, Austria, or rather Australia, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. Here in America, an elderly Holocaust survivor was burned to death in Colorado. And a beautiful young couple from the Israeli embassy in Washington was brutally gunned down right in front of the Holocaust Museum there. Thankfully, President Trump's administration is forcefully fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism, and every government here should follow its lead. But instead, many do the opposite. They actually reward the worst anti-Semites on earth. This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. Let me say that again. Nearly 90% of Palestinians supported the attack on October 7th. It's not supported only, they celebrated it. They danced on the rooftops. They threw candies. That's both in Gaza and in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as you call it. And it's just the way they celebrated another horror, 9/11. They danced on the rooftops. They cheered. They threw candy. You know what message the leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off. Well, I have a message for these leaders. When the most savage terrorists on earth are effusively praising your decision, you didn't do something right. You did something wrong, horribly wrong. Your disgraceful decision will encourage terrorism against Jews and against innocent people everywhere. It will be a mark of shame on all of you. But wait a minute, Mr. Prime Minister, they tell me. Wait a minute. We believe in a two-state solution where the Jewish state of Israel will live side by side in peace with the Palestinian state. There's only one problem with that. The Palestinians, they don't believe in this solution. They never have. They don't want a state next to Israel. They want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. And that's why every time they were offered a Palestinian state, but were required to end the conflict with Israel and recognize the Jewish state, every time, over the decades, they turned it down. And that is why every time they were given territory, they used it to attack us. In fact, they effectively had a Palestinian state in Gaza. So what did they do with that state? Peace? Coexistence? No. They attacked us time and time again. Totally unprovoked. They fired rockets into our cities. They murdered our children. They turned Gaza into a terror base from which they committed the October 7th massacre. So here's the uncomfortable truth. The persistent Palestinian rejection of a Jewish state in any boundary is what has driven this conflict for over a century. It is still driving it. It's not the absence of a Palestinian state. It's the presence and existence of a Jewish state. And I find it amazing that the foreign chancelleries and the ministries and all those who pontificate about this, and the leaders, how can they not see this basic truth when it is repeated again and again and again ad nauseum? And I want to say something else. This rejection of a Jewish state not only applies to Hamas, it also applies to the so-called moderate Palestinian Authority. You should know that the Palestinian authorities pays terrorists to slay Jews. The more Jews the terrorists slay, the more the Palestinian Authority pays. The Palestinian Authority names its government buildings, its public squares, its schools after the mass murderers of Jews, which they glorify as martyrs. They pay and glorify not just the killer of Jews, but also killers of Christians. Christians like Taylor Force, an American veteran who was brutally murdered in Israel by Palestinian terrorists. But, that I hear from the Western leaders. They tell me, the PA promised us it will reform. And I know this time, Prime Minister, it will be different. Yeah, right. We've heard these promises for decades. They always promise. They never deliver. Because you see, the Palestinian Authority is corrupt to the core. They haven't held elections in 20 years. They use the same textbooks as Hamas, exactly the same textbooks. They teach their children to hate Jews and destroy the Jewish state. And Christians don't fare much better. When Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, was under Israeli control, 80% of its residents were Christians. But since the PA took control, that number has dwindled to under 20%. These are the people you want to give a state to? What you're doing is giving the ultimate reward to intolerant fanatics who perpetrated and supported the October 7th massacre. Giving the Palestinians a state 1 mile from Jerusalem after October 7th is like giving Al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th. This is sheer madness. It's insane, and we won't do it. So here's another message to those Western leaders. Israel will not allow you to shove a terror state down our throats. We will not commit national suicide because you don't have the guts to face down a hostile media and anti-Semitic mobs demanding Israel's blood. And I want you to grasp something else, which is also distorted in the media. I say this not only in my name or the name of my government, but on behalf of all the people of Israel. Last year, there was a vote in the Knesset, our parliament, whether or not to oppose the imposition of a Palestinian state. You want to guess what the results were? Out of 120 members of our parliament, 99 voted against and only 9 supported. That's over 90%. It's not a fringe group. It's not the prime minister who himself is extreme or he's held hostage by extreme parties to his right. It's over 90% of Israelis. My opposition to a Palestinian state is not simply my policies or my government's policy. It's the policy of the state and people of the state of Israel. Western leaders may have buckled under the pressure. And I guarantee you one thing, Israel won't. Israel's victories over the Iranian... Thank you, I know you won't too, that's good. Israel's victories over the Iranian terror axis have opened up possibilities for peace that were unthinkable 2 years ago. Take Syria. For decades, the very idea of peace between Israel and Syria seemed unimaginable. Well, no more. Today, we have begun serious negotiations with the new Syrian government. I believe an agreement can be reached that respects Syria's sovereignty and protects both Israeli security and the security of the minorities in the region, including the Druze minority. From the founding of Israel, Jews and Druze have been brothers in arms. We have fought together, we've bled together, we built our lives together. When I was a young commander in Israel's Special Forces, my own life was saved by the invaluable advice given to me by a great friend, Salim Shufi, a heroic Druze IDF veteran. And that's why I couldn't sit idly by, nor could Israel sit idly by, while the Druze were being slaughtered by jihadists. And I instructed our forces to stop the massacre, which they promptly did. Peace between Israel and Lebanon is possible as well. I call on the Lebanese government to also begin direct negotiations with Israel. I commend it for its declared aim to disarm Hezbollah. But we need more than words. If Lebanon takes genuine and sustained action to disarm Hezbollah, I'm sure we can achieve a sustainable peace. Of course, until that happens, we will take whatever action we need to defend ourselves and to maintain the conditions of the ceasefire which was established in Lebanon. Our goal is not merely to monitor Hezbollah's actions, but to prevent them from violating the ceasefire and attacking us at any time. But I'm sure that if the Lebanese government persists in its goal of disarming Hezbollah, peace will come very speedily and very readily. Victory over Hezbollah has made peace possible with our two Arab neighbors in the north. Victory over Hamas will make peace possible with nations throughout the Arab and Muslim world. Our victory would lead to a dramatic extension and expansion of the historic Abraham Accords, which President Trump brokered between Arab leaders and myself 5 years ago. And I took note, as I'm sure you did too, of the encouraging words spoken here by the President of Indonesia. This is the country with the largest Muslim population of all nations. And it's also a sign of what could come. Forward-looking Arabs and Muslim leaders know that cooperating with Israel will provide them with groundbreaking Israeli technologies, including in medicine and science, in agriculture and water, in defense and AI, and so many other fields. I believe that in the coming years, the Middle East will look dramatically different. Many of those who wage war on Israel today will be gone tomorrow. Brave peacemakers will take their place. And nowhere will this be more true than in Iran. The long-suffering Iranian people will regain their freedom. They will make Iran great again. And our two ancient peoples, the people of Israel and the people of Iran, will restore a friendship that will benefit the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, the horrors that happened on one dark day, October 7th, those horrors happened countless times during the centuries of my people's exiles among the nations. Jewish blood was cheap. Jews were killed with impunity. We had to beg others to defend us. The rise of Israel did not mean that the attempts to destroy us would end. It meant that we could fight back against those attempts. And that is exactly what Israel has done since October 7th. Our sons and daughters fought like lions. Our brave soldiers donned their uniforms and rushed into battle. They were armed with the dreams of the 100 generations of Jews who came before them. The dream of living as a free people in the land of Israel, our beloved homeland for more than 3,000 years. The dreams of living in our own independent state. The dream of having an army to defend ourselves. And the dream of being a light unto the nations, a beacon of progress, ingenuity, innovation for the benefit of all humanity. On October 7th, the enemies of Israel tried to extinguish that light. 2 years later, the resolve of Israel and the strength of Israel burned brighter than ever. With God's help, that strength and that resolve would lead us to a speedy victory and to a brilliant future of prosperity and peace. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
All right. Welcome back to Badlands Media Live. I'm just trying to get the video pulled back up in case I want to reference it. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. Again, today is September 26, 2025. We just watched the replay of the speech that was delivered this morning at the UN by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. A lot of people had reached out to me over the past couple of days and asked me if I would be covering this and providing commentary. I wasn't able to do it live, so we just did it on a replay. But that actually worked out because now there's a lot of clips that are floating around. I can probably grab a few of those if we need to replay them. Man, there's a lot to unpack from this speech. Welcome, everybody. Hit the thumbs up. Thanks for being here. I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible so you can get on with your day. And I wanted to do this separate from, I thought about maybe doing this on my show this afternoon, but, you know, this would end up being the entire show. And there's just so much to cover geopolitically that, like the actual news, that I just didn't want to, this deserves its own standalone. So thanks again for being here. Okay, so let's go back to, the first 4 minutes, just to give y'all an idea. The first 4 minutes of the, like I could honestly just play the first 4 minutes. I'm not going to play long clips. I'm going to try to play like short 30-second clips wherever I do play clips. But the first 4 minutes was, you know, him invoking the October 7th, him talking about how October 7th was, you know, the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the world, all that kind of stuff. The worst atrocity since the Holocaust. He pulled out the map that he showed last year. At the very beginning of the speech, maybe we should back up and start there. You saw pretty much the entire General Assembly get up and leave. This happened last year. Maybe we should play the side by side. I think that actually might be powerful. Let me pull up real quick. Just give me a second. The speech from last year. He gave a speech last September, so it was exactly a year ago. Let me see, Netanyahu speech 2024 to leave. Let me see if I can make this, if I can find the right, because I saw a lot of people that were, yeah, here it is. I saw a lot of people who were like circulating this clip from last year, and they thought that there was a lot of misinformation this week that the speech had already happened, but people were playing clips from last year. So here's the clip from last year, and I think there's better clips than this one, but you can kind of get a sense from right here. I'm gonna see if I can zoom in a little better. You can kind of get a sense that there's still a lot of people. You know, it's a much smaller crowd. Again, this is September 27th, 2024. So we're talking about almost exactly a year ago. And I'm trying to see if I can find. So here's an article from it. Again, it says the Turkish delegation and many others walked out of the 79th United Nations General Assembly on Friday in protest ahead of a speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So again, like people walked out, but it was mostly the Muslim Ummah meaning community, the 57 Muslim nations. And it's not, when I say 57, it's not 57 Muslim majority nations. It's just 57 nations that have a significant enough Muslim population that they're included in the Islamic Organization of Cooperation. Anyway, you compare that to what happened this year. And we can just go back to the original.
The assembly invite him.
So there's a lot of hooping and hollering. I'm going to turn it down. But I mean, look how many people are leaving. It's like the entire.
Order in the hall.
It's like the entire assembly. I mean, there really aren't that many people left. And that just goes to show,
ladies and gentlemen,
how much the support in Israel just in the past 12 months has collapsed, like worldwide. And they're currently facing sanctions. Like they're looking at sanctions from the EU. They're looking at sanctions from a number of countries have already sanctioned them. Germany said they're not going to sell them weapons anymore. Britain's talking about not selling them weapons anymore. Spain's already stopped selling them weapons. I saw yesterday, I don't know if it's true, but the Netanyahu Security Council or Security Cabinet is now talking about demanding reparations from Spain for the Spanish Inquisition, and they want interest on top. That was like the 1400s. So, you know, it's things are getting kind of wild. They're getting kind of crazy. So back to the speech itself. Man, the first milestone I want to hit is the pager comment. And here's a Fox News clip. This is 17 seconds.
They got the message. You remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah. And believe me, they got the message. And thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. You remember those beepers? The pagers?
Yeah, so that's a pretty bold statement to make, considering that it's proven that a lot of children were actually killed in that, because these pagers, of course, weren't always on the targets. They were like sitting on kitchen tables. They were sitting, in random places. They weren't all like at the hip. And even when they were like out on the hip of the intended target, there would be people standing next to them who all, lost eyes, lost hands, thousands of people who weren't killed were permanently maimed by the attack. And a lot of those people were children, most of them innocent. Like they weren't the actual target. They were just collateral damage. But of course, it's really important to understand when you're looking at Israeli national security policy, is that the policy is very simple: the Jewish state above all else. And that's why they have what's called the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive, which we have, I think, confirmed that we have confirmed it at this point, because even I remember November of 2023, CanCon and I covered this on Badlands Daily. There were helicopter pilots, and there are clips out there now, the helicopter pilots in the interviews, and they're like are wearing their helmets. They're obviously trying to be anonymous. Their backs are to the camera, and they're speaking to like an interviewer, saying, "Yeah, we were instructed," and the videos are out there now too. The videos are now circulating. These are the videos of like the infrared cameras from the helicopters. And there are people around the world who are calling for this to be investigated by whoever, whoever could have some sort of interest in it, because you can't tell looking at these cameras what they're shooting. You can tell that in some of these videos there's like a struggle happening. So basically, these people who were being kidnapped, they were just shooting the trucks and killing everybody, killing the terrorists and killing the hostages. And that's called the Hannibal Directive. And the Hannibal Directive is simple. We, Israel, do not allow our citizens or our soldiers, especially our soldiers, to be taken hostage, because not only will they be tortured, under their belief, but they will be used as leverage against the Israeli state. And then we will have to compromise. We will have to make compromises in order to get those people back. And you saw throughout the speech, Netanyahu was invoking the hostages. And it's important to note that it's been proven again. And by the way, on top of the helicopter pilots, Yoav Gallant, who was the defense minister, he's like a political rival of Netanyahu, but Netanyahu brought him in to be the defense minister after October 7th and joined the War Council, as part of like a unity project. He said that the Hannibal Directive was given to the helicopter pilots, and they were basically just told to indiscriminately kill everybody. So before we go any further, I think we should pull somebody up whose integrity, I think, when it comes to Israel, is about as close to above reproach as you can get. And that person, of course, is somebody who I've criticized many times. Charlie Kirk. Let's listen to what Charlie Kirk said. This is the days after. This is like within a week of the October 7th attack. He went on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, and listen to what he says here.
Many times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is.
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and by report.
Yeah, and by reports, the finish his thought. By reports, 6 hours later, there was no response. There was nobody had showed up yet to combat them. And he's right. The whole country is the IDF. Everyone is required to serve in the IDF. And while I think only 5% is the number I've seen actually serve in combat roles, I'm pretty sure they all have to go through weapons training. I think everybody who joins the IDF, the 2 years required. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong about that, but I think most are required to go through weapons training, even if you're going to be a cook or have like a desk job or something. So yeah, that is pretty wild. And he's not the only one who said this in the wake after. I remember Kash Patel put out a post where he said there's no way that the training and the preparation needed to pull this kind of attack off, there's no way that somebody in the region wouldn't have known about this, especially like an outfit like Israel, like Mossad or Unit 8200 from the IDF or the Shin Bet. Somebody wouldn't have known, like saw people training with the flying go-karts, like all that stuff. So Kash Patel said that. General Flynn has said this. Again, these are all people who are very pro-Israel. Like that's their identity, is that they are pro-Israel Zionists, and they are all questioning this in the wake of October 7th. So yeah, it's, that just needs to be reiterated. And then getting back to what I was saying about the Israeli national security policy, it's the Jewish state above everything else. When there are no individual rights when it comes to Israel, there are the right of the state to protect itself against all threats, foreign and domestic. And if that means sacrificing lives, whether those lives are the lives of Arabs, the lives of Palestinians, the lives of Jordanians, the lives of Israelis, it doesn't matter. It's the Jewish state protecting the Jewish state above all else, because you can hear the rhetoric in Netanyahu's words. The spirit of that idea is that if Israel falls, the Jewish community will be erased. That's basically what the idea is, the spirit of what Netanyahu's whole zeitgeist is. And I think after listening to the speech, you might begin to understand why President Trump propped this guy up and made sure he was the one in charge of Israel through this critical moment in our history, in world history. Because anybody else from Israel steps up and gives a speech today, it doesn't sound like that, in my opinion. I think it's much more measured. It's much more. There's less hubris. There's less of a flippant attitude. Netanyahu is such an, as Jeffrey Sachs said, the guy that Trump reposted, the dark son of a bitch quote about Netanyahu. As Jeffrey Sachs said, he's a sick son of a bitch. And he has hubris. He has arrogance. And he's the one person who would walk into the UN on today of all days. Not meaning that today has a significant meaning in terms of the date. I'm just saying everything that's happening geopolitically and deliver a speech like that. So let's just run through some more portions of the speech. Okay, this part was pretty crazy. Let's go back to this. 5:30. Okay, so he pulls out this map and he gives a checklist of all the people they've assassinated. These are assassinations he's talking about here.
Half the Houthi leadership in Yemen, gone.
Dead.
Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone.
Dead.
Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone.
Hezbollah's leader, dead.
The Assad regime in Syria.
Assad's not dead, but he's gone. Yep.
those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and his top atomic bomb scientists, well, they're gone too.
Listen, consider what he just said right there. He said a bunch of scientists in Israel, in Iran, are dead. Scientists, not soldiers, not combatants. I mean, maybe technically, I guess you could make a lawyer might be able to make the argument that they're enemy combatants if they're building, if they are doing what he's purporting, which is building bombs. Okay, but again, they didn't go after these scientists. The scientists in Iran, they didn't go after at the facility. It's not like they bombed the facility while they were sitting there making bombs. They went after them at their homes. They were killing them at their houses and their families along with them. These were cold-blooded political assassinations. And every check mark right there represents not just one assassination, but groupings of assassinations, hundreds of assassinations in many cases, thousands in the case of Hezbollah. Like he said, the thousands of pagers that blew up. So this is an assassination campaign where they are willing to basically just kill anybody who threatens their national security in their mind. And the one place he didn't check off was Qatar. They fired a missile into Qatar to try to kill the Hamas leadership. It failed. They didn't kill Hamas leadership. They did kill a bunch of other people, but they didn't kill the people they were trying to kill. That's an amazing clip. That clip, I think, is going to come back to haunt him at some point. Let's see. I have 624 is the still. Yeah, so 624. And Ron Dermer, by the way, Ron Dermer is Netanyahu's.
Trump for his bold and decisive action.
Yeah, so then here he's invoking Trump, and he's like, Trump's the one who saved the day, right? Oh, wait, we need to listen to this.
And you saw this. Israeli pilot history. This.
Okay, so you remember how Trump called it the 12-day war. He coined it the 12-day war, right? Listen.
Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion. That's from the Bible. This 12-day war.
He renamed the war that Trump coined it. Trump said, I'm calling it the 12-day war. We're going to call it the 12-day war. And the reason the 12-day war moniker makes sense is because it's a callback to the 6-day war of 1967. 1967 is when the IDF took military occupation over the entire West Bank, all of Gaza, and the Golan Heights up in Syria, the mountains that separate Syria and Israel. And they've been there ever since. There's 3 places. They were driven out of Gaza in 2006 when Hamas took power. But before they were driven out of Gaza, the Palestinian Authority was driven out first. They were the first people that Hamas attacked. All right, let's just another minute of this.
Will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. And you saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action.
The irony there is that the bold and decisive action was to take control of the situation. If you don't remember what happened, Trump was pissed when he woke up and found out that they had bombed Iran without running it by them, basically. Now, there's allegations that they had run it by some people in the American government or the military, but you heard what Trump said. Trump was pissed about this whole situation, and then his bold and decisive action was to send the B-2s so that it would be over. And then he came out and he said, it's over now. It's 12 days of war and we're done. No more action. And then, of course, that was when Netanyahu sent more planes. And then Trump came out fuming and said they don't know what they're effing doing. That's what he said. So we have to make sure that we tell the history the way it actually happened and not Netanyahu's revisionist history. But he then renames the 12-day war Operation Rising Lion from the Bible because, again, this is emotional blackmail. He's trying to appeal to the hearts of Christian Zionists. He's not trying to appeal to your logic. He's trying to appeal to your hearts. He's tugging at the heartstrings by invoking the Bible as they're doing this. Ron Dermer, by the way, this guy right here, he did not look happy throughout the whole speech. He looked like you could tell he was looking around. This guy's like the Dan Scavino for Netanyahu. He's the Minister of Strategic Affairs. He was born in Miami, raised in Miami. I do give him credit because he rescinded his American citizenship. He's only an Israeli citizen now. So I respect him for not being a dual citizen. But yeah, he's been Netanyahu's right-hand man for the past like 25 plus years.
President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and we delivered on that promise.
Yeah, except they didn't, because the allegation now is that they are actually, and he goes on to actually say that. He's like, actually, they are still trying to develop nuclear weapons, so we need to finish the job. And let's jump ahead to that. I have that timestamp. I wasn't in the chat very much during the speech because I was just taking notes and writing down timestamps.
That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
Finish the job, meaning a war with Iran. That's what he's talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th, but we remember. Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, well, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here?
Okay, this part's pretty sick.
It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight and why we must win.
Okay, so that QR code is circulating around X right now. I'm not going to share it because I have no interest in going and watching gore porn. If I want to go see gore porn, there are dark places on the dark web you can go watch that. I'm not into that stuff. That sounds like what that is, though. Is just gore porn. Just people being slaughtered. Have no interest in watching that. Thanks, though. Pretty sick for them to be doing this when you consider that like what Charlie Kirk said. Like even Charlie Kirk is like, how the hell was this allowed to happen? And then the fact that the hostages haven't been returned. That's like been Trump's one thing, even when Biden was president, is bring the hostages home. And we've learned actually since that his security cabinet, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, they've been subverting the hostage deals the entire time. It hasn't been Hamas. The media has been blaming Hamas, but it's actually Hamas agreeing to what the terms are. And then at the last minute, them saying, okay, you know what? The terms have changed. And then Hamas being like, whoa. You're changing the terms? We don't agree. And then they're like, oh, look, Hamas doesn't want a deal. That's how that, and Itamar Ben-Gvir, I think, is on camera admitting that's what happened and bragging that he was the one to make sure that the deal didn't go through. Because in their mind, again, they want an existential war. They want a war where Hamas is wiped out. They don't want to make peace with Hamas. That's the whole point here. Okay, so let's jump ahead to, oh my gosh. Yeah, and then he goes on to say what the worst attack since the Holocaust is. Look at that.
It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here.
Okay, and it's really important to understand what he just said right there, because this has been one of the vicious lies that they've told you. They make it sound like when they say that these people were like tourists, like on vacation, who just got caught in the crossfire. What he's talking about is he's talking about dual citizens who signed up to join the IDF and then in the line of duty were either captured or killed. That's what he's talking about. Okay? He's not talking about tourists who just like were on vacation in Israel and were grabbed by Hamas. He's talking about members of the IDF who are dual citizens, 40 of them being Americans, and they were either killed fighting Hamas or they were captured. So that's a really important distinction, because those people signed up for the military of a foreign nation, of Israel. They signed up for that, like it's tragic that they died, but the outrage again should be pointed at the people who allowed this to happen on October 7th. And somebody in the chat I just saw made a really good point. I'm going to give credit here. D-Dale, DD, wonder if the blue suit and red ties by accident. It's a great point. That is a Trump outfit right there. That is the President Trump uniform he's wearing. And if you go look at all of the meetings that Trump and Netanyahu have always had, Netanyahu wears a black suit with a blue tie, like a light blue, like Israeli flag colored blue with the white shirt. And then he wears the black suit, and there's a contrast between Trump's blue suit and Netanyahu's black suit. You can go look at any picture of Netanyahu and Trump together. And today he's wearing the President Trump uniform. So again, and then I think he's wearing that's an Israeli flag pin on his lapel. Okay, so let's jump to, then this last one.
They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters.
So he's repeating a lie that the media ran with, and even the Israeli authorities, here's like July 24, 2024, the New York Times publishing it. And then here's Haaretz, the oldest newspaper in Israel, they are anti-Netanyahu. They're not pro-Netanyahu. Netanyahu has actually sanctioned them and has tried to get them shut down. It says, according to sources, including Israel's National Insurance Institute, kibbutz leaders, and the police. So 3 different sources. This is according to Israel's National Insurance Institute, like life insurance payments, or whatever. Kibbutz leaders and the police. On October 7th, 1 baby was murdered, 10-month-old Mila Cohen, and as I understand it, she was hit by a bullet. Like it was like a crossfire. Like she wasn't like executed. I think, as I understand it, it was like a stray bullet hit her. Okay, very tragic, very sad. But again, that's the only baby that died on October 7th was 10-month-old Mila Cohen. Rest in peace. It's awful that anybody had to suffer. Assuming that the story is even true, we got to, of course, maintain Chris Paul's line of thinking at all times. But again, this is like their own authorities telling you that this is all a lie. And then here's the Washington Post being like, is there any evidence of Biden's claims that babies were killed? Because again, they're invoking Israeli authorities here. The 10-month-old Mila Cohen's the only person who has been the only baby who's been officially cited as the death on October 7th. No accounts of beheaded or burned babies could be verified. So again, he talks about blood libel later in the speech. That was a blood libel. Okay, so let's jump ahead to this part. This is a really important moment right here. I think everyone who's afraid of the technocratic police state, listen to what he says right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried. They're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms. Let my people go. Free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48. Free the hostages now.
Okay. And so consider what he just said. I've gone and I've verified this from Israeli authority, Israeli X accounts. They surrounded Gaza with trucks. They did this in New York City too. They had trucks driving around, not only playing October 7th gore porn, but also blaring his speeches. His speech, I believe, this morning. I think that's being played in New York City, but it's definitely being played in Gaza. They surrounded Gaza, the Gazan border, with trucks with these giant speakers, and they're playing the speech into Gaza. Which this is a form of propaganda, by the way. This is like This is meant to like discourage you. This is meant to demoralize you because it's the enemy leader who, you know, I doubt very many people in Gaza have a very high opinion of Bibi Netanyahu. I doubt that they're actually going to listen to what he says and be like, huh, oh, okay, he's right. And he's saying, lay down your arms and surrender. And they're blaring that on trucks, on truck beds full of speakers into Gaza. But more important than that, he admits that Israeli intelligence, Mossad, Unit 8200, whichever one it is, has hacked into the cell phones of every person laying in Gaza, currently in Gaza, taken over their cell phone and is playing the speech in real time live on their cell phone. So he is like all of the things that you're afraid of about like the technocratic state doing to us. It's the Israeli government. They're the one with the technology, and they lease that technology out to other governments and to other entities in order to do that, to hack into your cell phone. Like all the software that does that. I think it's called Pegasus. I think Pegasus is the software that allows them to hack into your cell phone. That is an Israeli software company that created that. It's all Israeli software that does this. And a lot of it's, by the way, stolen from the U.S. Even President Trump's administration said that back in April when they issued a 17% tariff on Israel. And by the way, the whole spirit of this speech is like war, like we're going to have a war with Iran. Like, y'all get ready for this. Here's 1 year ago, September 27th, almost to the day, and he's holding up a sign saying the blessing and the curse. The blessing is the Arab world, the Arab Peninsula, and the curse is the Persian axis, the Iranian axis. Okay. And basically what he was saying at the time is we all, you know, India, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan, Jordan, UAE, we all need to go to war together against Iran and Syria and potentially Iraq. I mean, Iraq is like totally controlled by the CIA at this point, but it's a puppet state. But yeah. Okay, so 15. Oh, this was kind of a ridiculous moment. I'm trying not to like stop at every single little thing he does, but God, it's just, this speech is just so chocked full of like moments where he says, pop quiz.
Your enemies. Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I'm sure there are people in New York or in London or in Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? And the answer is everything. Because our enemies are your enemies. So let's do something else. So first at the UN, let's do a pop quiz. And raise your hand if you know the answer. Here's the first question. Who shouts death to America? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct, all of the above.
Yeah, and I've actually seen videos, and who knows if they're real or not, but I've seen videos like years ago, saw this, so like long before AI would have been powerful enough, or at least the AI that we have access to fake this, or maybe even the translation is just fake the whole time, but of even the Ayatollah saying that whenever they chant death to America, they're not, he says they're not talking about the American people, they're talking about the American deep state, like the American military industrial complex that seeks to destroy them, like which Netanyahu in a lot of ways personifies it. That's what they're talking about. So, which, you know, I think a lot of us could look at that and say, yeah, you know, I think we could all, our lives would certainly be improved if we didn't have these warmongering, bloodthirsty psychopaths waging war around the world in our name and using our money to do it. So anyway, let's see. We have oh yeah, this is a really, really good. So I got a phone notification. Just got to make sure everything's okay. Yeah, we're good.
Iran's nuclear facilities, Germany, the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs, 5 CIAs.
All right, so listen to this. This is like a remarkable little admission here. Listen to this.
General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence, once said, if the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. He said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us.
Think about that, though. What General George Keegan is admitting is he's like, this isn't intelligence that we have gathered and verified on our own. This is intelligence that's being fed to us by a foreign government who has who is highly biased, who has a huge conflict of interest in giving us this intelligence, and could be fabricating all of it, or at least, the critical parts of it. So again, the majority of this intelligence that we're getting is coming from Mossad. Like Mossad is telling the CIA, hey, here's who the enemies of America are. Y'all should go bomb these guys. That's effectively what Netanyahu just said. Like, again, this guy is so arrogant and he has he's so drunk on hubris that this is like a confession almost. He's like confessing things that people, quote unquote, anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists have been speculating for a long time. And he's just sitting here telling this to you like it is a accomplishment, but that's not the part that I wanted to play. The part I want to play is coming up.
President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags, and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that.
So again, he's accusing Iran of, remember there were several news outlets that ran with that. I think Fox News ran with it too, that Iran was behind President Trump's assassination. Trump was always very skeptical of that. Whenever that would be brought to his attention, he'd be like, I don't know about that. Think about what that would mean. That would be an act, like a very overt act of war. If Iran actually did do that and we knew that, we would already be at war with Iran. Like, no questions asked. We'd be at war with Iran. If it was actually proven. Ryan Ruth, the guy who just got convicted the other day, he actually has ties to Ukraine, not to Iran. And Ukraine and Iran, by the way, are on opposite sides of the conflict. Iran is with Russia, and Zelensky has been throwing shade at Iran for a while now and threatening them that if they don't stop supporting Russia, then they may find themselves getting attacked soon too. So again, none of the logic makes any sense here. And I just saw Newcase made a good point. They have such fantastic intelligence, but they didn't see October 7th coming. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. I think that's the point Charlie Kirk was making. But again, so he's saying not only was Ryan Ruth an Iranian asset, he's saying that, one second. He's saying that the other guy, whatever his name is, from Butler, his name escapes me. They're saying he's an Iranian asset too. Again, not sharing any of the actual evidence to support that. He's just telling you that trust me, bro, these guys are Iranian. It's like, okay. Okay. And again, it's like we haven't gotten the allegation yet that Tyler Robinson is connected to Iran, but you got to wonder when that's coming. You got to wonder when is Tyler Robinson, when is that going to come out of Netanyahu's mouth, that Tyler Robinson was working for Iran too, and it was Iran that killed Charlie Kirk. Okay, so then we get to the 9/11 analogy. This was kind of interesting.
But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack. We fought back. Now just imagine, just sit back for a second and imagine an attack against America proportioned to the attack against Israel on October 7th. Imagine a regime, a terror regime, dispatching thousands of terrorists to invade the United States. They massacre 40,000 Americans. They take 10,000 Americans hostage. What do you think America would do? You think America would leave that regime standing? You don't think that. No way, not a chance. The United States would wipe out that terror regime and ensure that such savagery would never threaten America again. This is precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. We're wiping out the terror regime of Hamas and ensuring that this savagery will never threaten Israel again. That's what we are doing. That's what any self-respecting government would do.
Okay, I want to let this play for a minute because, sorry, I'm just getting text messages that my kid needs to be picked up from school, I think, but might be taken care of. Sorry, I'm just trying to coordinate this in real time, make sure it's covered. So apologies, but I'm gonna let this play while I text for a minute.
Yet, and it's a yet that I'm sorry to say here. Yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you. It's an indictment of weak-kneed leaders who appease evil rather than support a nation whose brave soldiers guard you from the barbarians at the gate. They're already penetrating your gates.
Yeah, and so like what he's saying, I mean, he's kind of digging his own grave here because now it's like we really do need to adjudicate, where did Al-Qaeda come from? Where did ISIS come from? Where did all these like radical Islamic militant groups come from? Like what is the origin story, the real origin story behind them? Because, you know, we can trace it back to the CIA with a lot of confidence, but if we can also trace it back to Mossad, I mean, that's going to be very, like, those clips right there are going to be very damning because the emotional blackmail that's being used against the West and the people who are the countries that are recognizing the Palestinian state, it's very, very sick. And then we need to look at Abbas's speech, which is, you know, because he's sitting here talking about the Palestinian Authority and rewarding, you know, Hamas. Okay, well, let's look at what the actual Palestinian Authority leader said on camera. This was played yesterday in the UN, because his visa was denied. He wasn't allowed in New York City to like attend this assembly himself. Let's see what he says. This is from yesterday, and then I have another clip of him from a few days ago before that.
We reject confusing the solidarity with the Palestinian cause and the issue of anti-Semitism, which is something that we reject based on our values and principles. Within the framework of welcoming the outcomes of the International Conference for Peace, we reiterate today before the General Assembly the following points. First, the need for an immediate and permanent end to the war in Gaza. Second, the entry without conditions of humanitarian aid through United Nations organizations, including the UNRWA, and to stop using starvation as a weapon. And here we would like to thank the brotherly and friendly states and organizations that have been sending aids. Third, the release of all hostages and prisoners on both sides. The state of Palestine should take their full responsibility, starting with the Administrative Committee for the Gaza Strip, which is chaired by a minister in the Palestinian government, to manage the affairs of the Gaza Strip for a temporary period, and then to connect that with the West Bank, all through Arab and international support, and with Arab and international presence to protect civilians in Gaza and support the Palestinian forces under the umbrella of the United Nations.
Yeah, and that agreement, by the way, what he's saying is that there's an administrator, like an administrator, who is from the Palestinian government, who's supposed to be the one in charge of the Gazan government. That was agreed to in principle between the government of Palestine, him, and Hamas in 2017. And the reason that never went into place is because when they sent the prime minister in March of 2018 into Gaza in an armed convoy to work out the final details of how this was going to work, where like the administrative services of the government were going to be given back to the Palestinian Authority, they bombed the caravan and tried to kill the prime minister. And that's when he said, you know what, we're just going to cut y'all off financially. Have fun starving. Like we hope you eat each other. And then that was when Netanyahu stepped in and said, we have an opportunity here. Qatar, let's get some money. Let's walk the money in. Let's prop Hamas up, because now there's a conflict between the West Bank and Gaza. Let's turn them against one another. We can exploit this. And then so here's the the more important clip. This one's much shorter. This is from 3 days before that, Tuesday, I believe, Monday. They played this video on Monday. Okay, this one is not true. This one doesn't have the English overdub, but it's translated, so I'll just read the translation and I'll silence it. It says, Hamas will have no role in governing Gaza. Hamas and other factions, meaning the other quote unquote terrorist groups, the militant groups in Gaza, must surrender their weapons to the Palestinian Authority. We want a unified state without weapons. A state governed by one law, meaning one government, and one legitimate security force, meaning the Palestinian Authority security force that was driven out in 2006 by Hamas should return to Gaza and take control of Gaza. We emphasize our condemnation of the crimes of the occupation, talking about Israel. We also condemn the killing and detention of civilians, including Hamas's actions on October 7, 2023. So again, this is the Arab League, all of the Arab countries around Israel working with this guy to say, hey, Hamas, we don't back you. You need to surrender to us right now before Israel annexes Gaza. And Israel basically flippantly saying, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, we're not even dealing with y'all. We're just going to deal with Hamas. And by dealing with them, we mean we're going to kill all of them and take their land. And I'm sorry, I don't think I was sharing the screen when that was playing, and I apologize. But I'll just let it play through real quick. But this is him saying it. You can see the words on screen, but he is reading a prepared statement where he is saying this. You can see the date in the back. The other date from the other video was September 25th. This one says September 22nd, which is Monday. And it names like the UN General Assembly meeting behind him. So yeah. Okay, let's wrap this up. Okay, you cannot appease your way out of jihad is what Netanyahu says. Let's go back to the clips. Okay, the blood libels. Let's talk about that real quick. This is from this part.
Anti-Semitism dies hard. In fact, it doesn't die at all. It just keeps coming back with its libelous lies. refurbished, regurgitated over and over again. And I want to tell you something else. These anti-Semitic lies, they have consequences. In recent months, Jews have been assaulted in Canada, Austria, or rather Australia, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. Here in America, an elderly Holocaust survivor was burned to death in Colorado. And a beautiful children to bake Passover matzahs.
Yeah, I think I missed the. Let me back it up a little bit.
That's why you have deprivation. Those who peddled the blood libels of last month, even the UN, not exactly a supporter of Israel.
Which is funny because the UN literally created Israel with the partition of Palestine in 1947. That was a UN directive that created Israel.
Supposed to laugh, by the way.
Please laugh, Jeb Bush.
Month, even the UN admitted that Hamas and other armed groups looted 85% of the trucks. That's why you have deprivation.
The other armed groups, if I have my facts right, were the Israeli settlers, and there's videos all over the place of these Israeli settlers. These are some of the most radical people in Israel who go like house to house and take people out of their homes and steal their homes by force with the IDF standing behind them. They were the ones who were looting the trucks and throwing dumping the food out in the sand, and doing that stuff.
Those who peddled the blood libels of genocide and starvation against Israel are no better than those who peddled blood libels against the Jews in the Middle Ages when they falsely accused us of poisoning wells, spreading plague, and using the blood of children to bake Passover matzahs.
Let's address that real quick, because I'm not into collective blame. Like, we don't blame entire groups of people for the actions of a few, but we do have to be like fact-based here. There are several written historical accounts that do talk about the poisoning of wells by the Jewish community, going into places where they were bitter because they viewed these places as anti-Semitic, and so they went in and poisoned the wells. And I mean, the facts could, of course, be recorded, could have been misrecorded, but there are many, many historical records that show that, and there are paintings of it and all that stuff. And then, as far as the blood of children, you should know about Saint Simon of Trent, the 2-year-old. I think he was 2 years old. 2 years old. This is 1475. There was a whole court case about this, where the people were found guilty. But basically what happened is that the rabbis from this community kidnapped this kid, and performed a ritual on him where they extracted his blood. And it was some sort of like satanic ritual, basically. And there are many, there are many famous sculptures and paintings about it. This kid was canonized. This happened in Italy, in Trent, Italy. And yeah, here's the sculpture of them doing this to the kid. There's a very famous painting by there's a relatively new painter out there. I mean, he's close to my age, a few years older than me. Giovanni Gasparo. He's like the greatest contemporary Italian painter. I mean, if you look at his paintings, look how ridiculous his paintings are. This is one of his paintings. And so he does like classical Renaissance style painting, but with like a surreal twist on it. Often, like he also just does realistic portraits. This is Felipe the Sixth of Spain. So he does like realistic paintings as well of like historical events. Like a lot of paintings of Jesus. But I think his most well-known painting is this painting, which is the Martyrdom of Saint Simon. And it's very hard to find this painting on Google. If you try to go just type that in, the Martyrdom of Saint Simon, here's like one of a guy playing a cello. Very talented artist, frankly. But here is a pretty graphic image of the Martyrdom of Saint Simon. Okay. So when he says that stuff, it's like, it's not a blood libel. It's not like without basis. And again, the expectation here is not that we should be condemning, every person who identifies as Jewish. The expectation here, the standard here, or that we should be, changing our moral fiber so that we don't harm the delicate sensibilities of people who identify as Jewish. The moral standard here that should be imposed is that people who are Jewish should be just as repulsed by this as we are, like as anyone else. Any other person who's not Jewish who looks at this and is like, this is disgusting. And I expect there are a lot of people who are Jewish who would be repulsed by this. So, you know, Netanyahu, again, is just lying, invoking historical misinformation, you know, the beheaded babies thing, emotional blackmail. And we have to call it out. We just have to call it what it is. And then another one of those statements, which I don't even think this was from this speech, but I saw it on X. If I have this, it is from the speech. And maybe we'll just end it here. Let me see if there's any more. Oh, no, there's one more I want to do after this one, but we might as well go ahead and cover this one. I don't remember exactly. I didn't write this one down, so I don't know where exactly this timestamp is. But this is one of the great lies from his speech.
State. And Christians don't fare much better. When Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, was under Israeli control, 80% of its residents were Christians. But since the PA took control, that number has dwindled to under 20%. These are the people you want to give a state to? A state. And Christians don't.
So just so we're clear, the Jerusalem was controlled, like the Holy Land of Israel, or like Israel as they call it now. Palestine is the historical name for it. It's the name that every group has ever used that ever occupied it. The Romans, the Ottomans, they all called it Palestine. All of them did. Even the Bible published, any Bible published before 1908, when the Schofield Bible came out, they all had maps in the Bible. You can go find them that say Palestina or Palestina or Palestine. 1,200 years, basically, Jerusalem was under Islamic control. 1,200 years. Okay. The population of Jerusalem was always over 85%. Okay. Like Netanyahu actually kind of like accidentally tells you that when the Palestinian Authority took over, the population of Jerusalem was 85%. Yeah. 1,200 years of Islamic control. And the population of Jerusalem always remained over 85%. Christian, 85% Christian, I'm sorry. 85% Christian, even under Islamic control. And that's because the largest landholder in Israel today is the Orthodox Greek Church. The Orthodox Greek Church is the largest landholder. It's been there for whatever, like 1,000 years. It's never had to pay taxes to the Muslims. Like the Ottoman Empire, none of them, the caliphates never made them pay taxes because they recognized that they were a historic religious group and they didn't tax their land. Okay. Israel in the past couple of years has started to tax their land. And now there's a big scandal brewing because they refuse to pay the property tax. And so now the government of Jerusalem, the Israeli government of Jerusalem, has frozen their bank accounts, and they can't pay anyone. They can't pay their clergy. They can't pay their bills. They can't pay anything because they refuse to pay this property tax that was only recently imposed on them recently. And the idea that the population of Jerusalem dropped ever since the Palestinian Authority took over. No. The population of Jerusalem dropped when the IDF took control of the West Bank through military force during the 6-Day War in 1967. That is when the population of Christians in Jerusalem began to drop precipitously. And here is just one of those proofs. The siege of the Church of the Nativity. This is in 2002, and this was part of a larger thing that happened where these small communities around Bethlehem, all Christian, these were like all Christian communities, they boycotted Israel. They boycotted any business that was because they had new taxes that were imposed on them by the Israeli government. And so they said, you know what? I think it was a VAT tax, a value added tax was imposed on them. And so all the leaders of these Christian communities said, you know what? We're just all going to boycott the Israeli companies, businesses. We're only going to do business with the Palestinian businesses. And so they actually sent the IDF in to these communities. They cut the electricity and the phones to their communities. So they lived without electricity or without communications for months in some cases. And the allegation, or in the church nativity, the Church of the Nativity situation, they were saying, the IDF was saying that Hamas, or I guess it was the PLO, who was it? I think they're saying Fatah, which is like the PLO. They were basically the Palestinian Authority. They were, their militants were hiding out in these churches, and that's why they were surrounding the communities, and that's why they had snipers set up, with guns pointed at like these kids and these churches. And it became this huge international scandal where you had the British government getting involved. Like, here's the British Foreign Office Minister describing Israel's actions in the area as totally unacceptable. You had the UN get involved. You had the Vatican got involved, and they were all saying, what the hell are y'all doing? The Greek Orthodox Church called upon the Christians worldwide to make the upcoming Sunday a solidarity day for the people in the church and the church itself, and called for immediate intervention to stop what it referred to as the inhumane measures against the people and the stone of the church. It also asked Christians, Muslims, and Jews to gather at the main entrance to Bethlehem and march to the church, because what they all recognized was that they were lying. This had nothing to do with Islamic militants. They were doing this against the Christian community because the Christian community was boycotting the Israeli government because of taxation that was unjustly being foisted upon them. Okay? So again, lies, lies, lies. And as a result, a lot of these communities disappeared because the people were forced to leave because they couldn't make a living anymore. They had the electricity cut off to their town. Their town basically was unusable, right? And then what happened is that the Israeli settlers came in and just stole all their furniture and like took their refrigerators, went and sold their refrigerators for money. There are videos of them selling their refrigerators and selling their sofas and stuff. It's disgusting. And the fact that like this is not more widely understood in the West just demonstrates how vicious the media is with their lies and how they have tried to condition us to not understand what is actually happening over there. And it's not just the Muslims being subjugated. It's not even just the Christians. There are Jews in Israel, in Jerusalem, who oppose Zionism, who oppose the creation of the Israeli state because they oppose what is known as revisionist Zionism. You may have heard Zach Payne talk about this last Monday on Baseless Conspiracies. Revisionist Zionism was created in the 1920s or 30s by Zeev. What's his name? Jabotinsky, Zeev Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky was the leader of the Irgun militia, one of the terrorist groups, recognized as a terrorist group not only by the U.S. government, by the international community, but also by the Israeli government. The Israeli government, when it finally formed officially, called the Irgun and the Lehi both terrorist organizations. The leader of the Irgun was Zeev Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky, whose personal secretary, by the way, was Netanyahu's father, Benjamin Netanyahu. The Irgun, or Jabotinsky rather, invented what is called revisionist Zionism. And the idea of revisionist Zionism traditionally, like back in the day, was once the Messiah comes, then we go create the kingdom on earth. Once the Messiah arrives, the Messiah hasn't come yet. So once the Messiah arrives, then we go create the Israeli kingdom. And so that's why they oppose Zionism, and that's why many of them even oppose the existence of Israel, because they say this is this contradicts their religious beliefs, that this isn't supposed to happen until the Messiah arrives. Yeah. So anyway, by the way, the Irgun, the Lehi, the Haganah, those are the three main militant groups that were the terrorist groups that were operating in Israel in the 1930s, 1940s. They all merge in 1949 and become what? The IDF. So the IDF was literally the founding of the IDF were organizations that were classified as terrorist organizations by the Israeli government. And then they are reconstituted, merged together, and form what is now known as the Israeli military. I mean, this history is insane, but it is the truth. And it's just not widely disseminated or taught. All right, last thing I want to do, and then I want to get out of here so that John can do his show, is right here. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I need to share my screen.
Message to those Western leaders. Israel will not allow you to shove a terror state down our throats. We will not commit national suicide because you don't have the guts to face down a hostile media and anti-Semitic mobs demanding Israel's blood. And I want you to grasp something else, which is also distorted in the media. I say this not only in my name or the name of my government, but on behalf of all the people of Israel. Last year, there was a vote in the Knesset, our parliament, whether or not to oppose the imposition of a Palestinian state. You want to guess what the results were? Out of 120 members of our parliament, 99 voted against and only 9 supported. That's over 90%. It's not a fringe group. It's not the prime minister who himself is extreme or he's held hostage by extreme parties to his right. It's over 90% of Israelis. My opposition to a Palestinian state is not simply my policies or my government's policy. It's the policy of the state and people of the state of Israel.
Now, very telling there. Well, I think we'll just end it there. The last thing he says, that I'll just summarize, he says the Middle East will look very different soon. All the people who are the warmongers will be cast out, and we will have peace and prosperity. And I agree with that. But the question is, who are the warmongers? You know, I think they're kind of revealing themselves right now. You know, that's a very telling little line that he says there at the end, because again, elections are fake and gay. I think we can all kind of agree to that at some point. The way that these multi-party governments work, especially in Israel, is that you don't vote for the individual politician. You vote for the party, right? And the party wins a certain number of seats, and then they assign people to the seats. And typically they assign the people who are campaigning for the party during the election campaign. And then, of course, the Knesset comes together, or it's the responsibility of certain leaders. Whoever's party has the most seats right after the election, they get the first crack at forming what's called a coalition. They have to get 61 out of the 120 Knesset seats to back them as prime minister, and then that's how you form a coalition government. All right, and that's how Europe does it as well. You heard about France's government collapsing. It was just their legislature that collapsed because they stopped backing the prime minister. So that's how their governing body works. But there's probably some truth to what he's saying there. I mean, it's you know, there are plenty of people in Israel who will talk about their opposition to what's happening right now, their opposition to Netanyahu. Charlie Kirk was talking about the people who were protesting against Netanyahu. You know, some of that could be contrived and orchestrated, but there certainly are enough like writers and voices out there who oppose him ostensibly. However, there also are people who I think like Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, politicians who oppose him as an individual, as a leader, but they don't necessarily oppose his agenda. They, you know, some of them might even be okay with signing a two-state solution with Palestine as long as they can have a war with Iran long term. Like they'll sign a peace deal today to get everyone off their back, but tomorrow they want to go to war with Iran. Which again, I think goes back to my central thesis that President Trump wants Netanyahu as the leader in this moment in time because he's the one who's the most arrogant and is going to, and the most bullheaded, and is going to plow forward full tilt, like into the agenda, because there's no going back for him. As soon as he's done being in power right now, he's going to be probably charged with war crimes. He's definitely going to face the 3 felonies he was charged with in 2019. He's probably going to end up going to prison in Israel if he's convicted on that stuff, which he probably will be. So for him, there's no turning back. For him, he's got to go full tilt. Whereas other politicians, they might play the calculus and say, you know what? Let's surrender today to live, to, you know, retreat today to live to fight another day. Let's sign this peace deal, and then we will work on subverting it tomorrow. Netanyahu can't afford to do that. For him, it's do or die, which is why I think Trump wants him in the place he is right now, to deal with this today so we don't deal with it in 10 years or for the rest of our lives. So how does this all end? Well, that remains to be seen. But Netanyahu a few weeks ago did sign a thing called the E1 agreement. The E1 agreement says under Israeli law or whatever, it's now official policy that Israel is going to annex 85% of the West Bank. They already have been militarily occupying it for the past 50 years, but now they're going to annex it. Or I'm sorry, 60 years. It's been 59 years. They're now going to annex it and make it formally part of Israel. They're just going to erase the name Palestine and just write in Israel. This isn't Gaza, by the way, we're talking about. We're talking about the bigger part, West Bank, where Hamas has no presence, no political presence. So we'll see what happens. The Muslim countries that have all been at war with each other for many years, but now suddenly are all on the same sheet of music, sovereign alliance, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, they all met with Trump the other day, and we don't know exactly what was said to Trump, but Trump did come out and say, I'm not going to allow them to annex the West Bank. And that maybe is the final clip to play, is Trump in the West Bank, which is exactly what he said during his first term. Right here. Oh, let me share my screen. Sorry.
But did you promise leaders this week that you would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank? Is that something that you?
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay? Yes,
yeah, I believe Trump when he says that. That's the Trump that I've been talking about for years now. That some people just have the blinders on and they're just so animated by the emotion of the whole situation that they can't see through the fog of war. But that's the Trump that I've been telling everyone about. And I think he's being 100% positive, like 100% truthful there. And that's not going to sit well. You heard Netanyahu in that speech. It's not going to sit with Netanyahu. Netanyahu said, it's not just me. It's all of us. We all want this. We all want Palestine for Israel. And Trump saying, absolutely not. So we'll see what happens. We're going to talk about this a little more in the geopolitical context on my show this afternoon. Hit the thumbs up, guys. Appreciate y'all joining me. Let me see if we have any rants. If not, we'll just go ahead and get out of here. Yep, looks like we're good on rants. So thanks again, and I'm gonna raid us into John's show. So I will see y'all at 2:00. That's an hour. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.